let's talk about how to defend your plan. Hey, I'm Angelika. I'm a leadership coach and I help you be the leader you know you can be. Planning is an essential leadership skill. So you may have seen the videos on top-down versus bottom-up planning. Or you may have found that you prefer to do backward planning over forward planning or the other way around. If you want to watch those videos, you'll find the link up here. Once your plan is done, you're probably in a situation, if you're working in a large organization, where you show or present your plan to your stakeholders, to your project sponsor, to your boss, depending on what type of plan it is. You have some kind of peer review or stakeholder review. That might be a management meeting or a one-to-one with your boss, or it might be a steering committee in the case of a large-scale project. And working with managers and project leaders, I often get the question, how do I defend my plan? Because the experience is often that there are these testing questions. Like, really, is this sure? Are you sure we can do that? Where is the buffer? Show us where the buffer is, in brackets, so that we can cut it. I'm sure you have hidden some buffer. We can do that much faster, can't we? So that's the type of questions people are used to when they talk with senior managers about their plans. I come from a history of doing 15 years of projects, IT projects, change management projects. So I typically talk about project scenarios and about steering committees. But your situation may be different. You may be a marketing manager presenting the budget or the timeline for your product launches or your communication campaigns for the coming year. Similar scenario, just the types of people who are sitting in there will be a different group. The purpose of the exercise to validate your plan and to commit to, yes, this is the final plan or the committed plan. That is the same in either scenario. So how do you defend your plan? First of all, know your plan inside out. And since very likely you are working with a team and you've had people in providing input and estimates to your plan, because one part of the plan may be the budget and another one might be the capacity and another one might be the schedule or the timeline. So to some extent, somebody's estimate as to how long something will take, how many people or how many hours are invested in that, how much effort is invested in creating, doing that, or how much money it will cost, that is somewhere included. That's what I mean by estimates. So know your estimates and also know the estimates of the people who have delivered into your plan. If you're working with a large-scale project, you have sub-project leaders. If you're working with your own team, you have your team members who have provided some of their estimates. If you're working with providers, they have provided an estimate. And one of your tasks in creating that plan is to validate with the people who are actually delivering into your plan what their estimates involves. Sometimes an IT provider will create an estimate for design and programming, but not testing, or including testing, but not cutover support. Sometimes a graphics designer will create an estimate for the design and the preparation, but not for the implementation. Quite apart from the fact that it's best if you provide exactly how far that estimate needs to reach, what your prerequisites are for the planning. You need to validate what has been delivered to you. So know your estimates and know what the content of your plan is. Not just what you did, but ask and validate and verify that whatever has been delivered to you, how much is involved, like which phases, what extras may have been considered or not. So that's the first one. Second one, Know your buffers. We need to work with buffers in a realistic planning environment. The larger your initiative is, the more people are involved, the more parties are affected, and the longer that initiative takes, the more you need to do some forecasting into the future, because unknown things will happen. So there is some kind of buffer that we need to include in our estimates. If the net effort to do a task is 2 hours, but it needs a peer review and it might be an inexperienced team member next time, then it's probably safe to say, let's calculate that it takes roughly half a day until it's solidly done. You get the idea. And you need to know where those buffers are. And that's why, coming back to number 1, that's why I asked you to know your estimates and the estimates of the people who have delivered into your plan. There is no harm in creating an extra estimate or buffer your estimate, but you need to know where your buffers are. And it's best to say, all right, the net effort is 10 days, but for safety's sake, let's calculate 12. So that's our contingency, which is included in that single task effort. But that's it. It's not like, oh, and then we're hiding another 5 days, etc., because da-da-da. No, you need to know that your standard rules of procedure are 10 days means, okay, 2 days extra, just that's the contingency for that one task. Nothing else hidden anywhere. Know your estimates. Know where your buffers are. They can be part of the estimates as a contingency, as in the example with the 10 days from a moment ago, or they can be in your timeline. Like you have an external milestone, 15th of September, you need to hand over to some external party. Then your internal milestone, maybe a week before, might even be a month before, depending on how much of internal leeway or internal reviews you need to do. Is that a buffer if you have an internal milestone of a month ahead? I can argue for, no, it's not a buffer time, because we need 2 weeks at least to do the consolidation, the review, the back and forth double checking. We need to account for an extra loop of corrections, and they tend to take a week. Right, that's 3 weeks already. And then we need to make sure that we can actually hand in to that official external party on the 15th. So in that case, there is no buffer time. It's just an internal milestone because you want to make sure that everything is prepared so that you can keep that 15th. That's not buffer time. That is solid, realistic planning. If you don't know where your buffer time is, and if you cannot justify and explain why you have this 4-week break in between an external milestone and an internal milestone, your management might jump on that. And if you are not well known at your management level, or if it's a client organization, it's totally fair and fine if they ask, because you're an unknown entity and they need to understand the logic and plausibility that you used in order to come up with that plan. So it's just fair if they ask questions. The critical thing for you is to treat those questions like a validation exercise. Let them poke holes in it. Let them have their concerns. Let them ask tricky questions. Let them put your plan to the test. You'd rather find out now that you and your team overlooked something, and then you're like, ooh, okay, I wasn't aware that that could be an occurrence. I wasn't aware that that scenario could actually come into play, because I wasn't aware that we're thinking about onboarding an additional team and buying a new company, moving manufacturing to a different location. If there may be information in that group that you didn't have, all right, better learn about it now and say, okay, wasn't aware of that, need to come up with variant 2 for this plan, because it's in such a scenario it cannot hold up. That's okay. And the moment you release yourself from the pressure of defending this final plan and doing it perfect the first time round, and instead going into that meeting with the attitude of, we've done a great plan. We've made sure that we have our estimates properly done, that we have a realistic scenario, that we've validated among ourselves and with our providers and the other people involved. This is a solid plan. All right, let's make sure that we're not overlooking something. Let's treat this as a validation exercise. Then you have every right to go into that meeting and say, right, I'm here to share this plan with you. And you don't have a problem with inviting feedback, concerns, and listen to those. The other thing you need to know is know your consequences. Know the impact of any changes that one of your stakeholders might suggest. For example, can we cut time? What happens if you cut time? Will a critical feature that's super important to the client not be part of the solution? Will you not be able to make a certain flourish decoration? What is the impact of cutting time? It could also be that some of the team members or your provider is not available if the requirement is to start early. All right, understood. What is the impact of cutting money? What is the impact of cutting people? All of these are valid management questions. And one of the validations is not just for your plan, like how solid is that plan? How reliable is it? But it's also about you as the person presenting that plan. Depending on how well people already know you, they have to come to an understanding for themselves, a judgment or a discernment as to how reliable is that person who's presenting this plan to me? How credible is that? How realistic is that plan? How solid is that plan? Because remember, the people in this management meeting, whether they're your boss, the next hierarchy level, a steering committee, or your client's organization, they're much farther removed from the operational people who have actually created that plan and who will execute it. So what is their way of making sure that whatever they commit to, and the idea of this meeting is that everyone in the room can commit and say, all right, this is the plan that we commit to. This is also for many of the senior managers, the plan that they will share and communicate across their organizations. So they want to make sure that what they say I commit to in the name of my team, my organization, that is valid and solid. And since you're the person who created that with your team and you're the one presenting it, they also need to a certain extent, validate and understand what the logic was that you used when you created that plan. Does that make sense? Right. So we had know your estimates, know your buffers, know your consequences or the impact of any changes, so that you can also explain why a certain variant of the plan will not fulfill your stakeholders' requirements or will pose a different problem. There is no need to hide your buffers. Everybody wants to make sure that you're doing a realistic plan, especially if you're discussing something that is a whole year long or a several month project or even more than a year. Like a large scale digital transformation can take 1.5, 2.5 years. So the people who want to commit to this plan, they want to make sure that they understand it and that the logic, how it came about, is solid so that it becomes a realistic plan. And that is why you will get a couple of interesting, weird, testing questions, which may feel uncomfortable in the moment, depending on also on the style they are being delivered. And that's why your attitude of, all right, I'm here, let's test this plan. We've done the best that we can. We're sure that it's valid. I know my stuff and I can defend that plan. And then the attitude changes from you're there to defend your plan. Instead, you're there to present your plan and to share your plan. And then you can also say, all right, let's discuss if there is anything that we may have overlooked. I'm inviting you to share this. So if you know what went into the plan, if you know your estimates, if you know where buffers are included, if you know the consequences of any potential changes, if you know dependencies, etc., then there is no reason to be super pressured to defend your plan. Because you can also be very transparent about how it came about, because you've done your job. And then the how can I defend my plan becomes a how can I present the plan, and how can I get the commitment of the stakeholders in the room so that we can all agree that this is the plan that we're going to follow. So I hope this is helpful. Happy leading. See you soon.